The cold air of Vornath's capital city pressed against Ryan Hale's skin like invisible iron. The world was made for giants, not for men. The towers rose like mountains, the streets wide enough for beasts larger than tanks, and the people, if they could be called that, were not people at all. They were the Vornathi, tall, scaled beings with glowing eyes and voices that rumbled like thunder. Their bones were crystal, their armor fused into their skin, and their strength could shatter metal. Among them, Ryan looked like a shadow that had lost its place in the light. He walked slowly through the palace gates, his human boots echoing faintly on the black stone floor. Vornathi guards watched him with unreadable eyes. To them, he was a fragile creature, a curiosity brought from a small blue planet on the edge of a forgotten star. He knew they saw him as weak, but he didn't care. Humans had always been underestimated, until the moment they weren't. At the far end of the throne hall sat Queen Syraxis, ruler of 10 worlds and conqueror of countless armies. Her body shimmered under the pale light, her scales reflecting every shade of silver and violet. Her eyes, bright like molten gold, followed Ryan as he approached. She was breathtaking, beautiful, and terrifying at once. Her presence alone felt like gravity, pulling everything toward her. "You are smaller than I expected," she said, her voice calm but cutting. Ryan stopped at the bottom of the steps leading to her throne. "Humans often are," he said with a faint smile. The queen tilted her head, studying him like one might study an insect that had learned to speak. "And yet they say your kind is dangerous." Ryan's lips curved. "We can be." The hall went silent. Even the air seemed to pause, as if waiting for her reaction. Syraxis rose from her throne, her shadow stretching over him like a dark wing. "Tell me, human, how do your people survive without claws, without armor, without strength?" Ryan looked up, meeting her gaze without fear. "We survive," he said softly, "because we never stop trying. Because when the universe knocks us down, we get up, again and again." The queen's golden eyes narrowed. For the first time, something flickered across her face, confusion, maybe curiosity. The audacity of this small creature standing before her, speaking as if he understood strength better than she did, unsettled her, but there was something honest in his voice, something that couldn't be faked. That night, as the queen sat alone in her chamber, she replayed his words in her mind. "We never stop trying." The phrase was simple, yet it lingered in her heart like a small spark refusing to die. She had seen thousands of warriors fall without fear, yet none had spoken with the calm fire that burned in that human's eyes. The next morning, Ryan was summoned to join the royal council. War had broken out on the moon of Drethys, a rebellion threatening the queen's rule. She spoke to him directly. "You will remain here. This battle is not for your kind." Ryan looked at her steadily. "With respect, Your Majesty, I'm part of your alliance. That means I fight too." Her eyes flared with anger. "You'll be killed. Your bones will turn to dust under Drethys's gravity. Your blood will freeze before it hits the ground." "Maybe," Ryan said, fastening the small armor plate to his chest. "But if my allies are in danger, I don't hide behind walls." Syraxis turned away, furious and confused. No being had ever spoken to her like that. Not a general, not a warlord, certainly not a fragile human. Yet she couldn't stop him. She found herself watching him as he walked away, small, determined, utterly fearless. That night, as the queen's ship prepared for battle, she stood by the window, gazing at the distant moon glowing red with rebellion. She should have dismissed him, sent him back to his fragile little planet. Yet something in her gut whispered that the human would matter. For reasons she couldn't explain, she felt uneasy. Not because of the battle ahead, but because of what she saw in Ryan's eyes. It wasn't arrogance. It wasn't madness. It was something purer. It was the kind of strength that came not from power, but from pain. And though she didn't know it yet, that small, fragile human was about to change everything she believed about weakness and about herself. The journey to the moon of Drethys was long and silent. Outside the warship's windows, the stars burned cold and distant, like silent witnesses to what was coming. Inside the ship, soldiers moved like shadows, tall armored Vornathi warriors ready to kill or die at their queen's command. Among them walked Ryan Hale, the only human on board. His armor looked thin beside theirs, his helmet light, his weapon small. The alien soldiers stared at him with disbelief. Some whispered that he was suicidal. Others laughed quietly, calling him the fragile guest, but Ryan ignored them. He wasn't here for pride. He was here to prove something, though he wasn't sure to whom. Queen Syraxis watched from the command deck, her golden eyes fixed on him. She didn't understand why this small being kept forcing himself into danger. Humans were strange. Soft flesh, weak hearts, short lives, yet this one stood like a storm waiting to happen. When the ship entered Drethys's orbit, the red glow of battle already painted the clouds. Explosions bloomed on the surface like dying suns. The Queen gave the order. Prepare for descent. The dropships roared out of the hangar, slicing through smoke and lightning. Ryan was in the first squad, shoulder to shoulder with warriors 3 times his size. The vibration shook his bones. He tightened his grip on his rifle and whispered to himself, "Just like Earth storms. You've seen worse." The dropship landed hard. The ramp opened and hell broke loose. The battlefield was chaos. Fire tore through the ground. Plasma bolts streaked across the sky and alien screams filled the air. The rebels of Drethys, once servants of the Queen, now fought with desperation, their weapons blazing with stolen energy. Ryan ran forward beside the Vornathi soldiers. His heart pounded, his breath short under the heavy air. The gravity was brutal. Every step felt like he was dragging a mountain. Yet he kept moving. He fired, ducked, rolled, and kept his squad alive. At first the Vornathi ignored him, assuming he'd fall quickly. But when a plasma grenade landed near them, Ryan threw himself over it, shoving 2 soldiers away. The explosion hurled him backward, armor cracked. But he got up again, coughing, still holding his weapon. The nearest Vornathi warrior stared at him in disbelief. "Human, you're insane." Ryan grinned through the blood on his lips. "You're welcome." Above, the Queen's ship hovered like a shadow over the battlefield. From her command bridge, Syraxis watched the human's movements on her holographic display. She had expected him to cower behind cover, maybe get himself killed quickly. But what she saw instead made her pause. He was everywhere, dragging the wounded, firing back, refusing to stop. She could almost feel his heartbeat through the transmission, steady and relentless. "Why?" she murmured to herself. "Why does he keep going?" Hours passed. The ground trembled with explosions. The rebels were fierce, but the Queen's army pushed forward. Ryan's armor was scorched, his leg bruised, his arm bleeding from shrapnel. Still, he fought like a machine powered by sheer will. Then came the moment that would burn itself into the Queen's memory forever. A tower ahead began to collapse, a massive structure made of alien steel, falling toward a group of soldiers who hadn't seen it yet. Without thinking, Ryan sprinted into the danger zone. His lungs screamed, his body begged him to stop, but he didn't listen. He shoved 2 Vornathi out of the way just as the tower came crashing down. The impact shook the ground. Dust and fire rose into the air. "Human down," someone shouted. The Queen froze. Through the smoke, she saw his signal flicker on the screen. Weak, fading. Without hesitation, she grabbed her weapon and leapt from the ship. Her guards shouted after her, but she ignored them. The ground shook when she landed. She tore through wreckage and fire until she found him. Ryan lay half-buried under twisted metal, blood streaking his face, his breathing shallow. Syraxis knelt beside him, her claws trembling as she pulled the debris away. He looked up at her with half-closed eyes and managed a small broken smile. "Still alive? Told you I'd make it." For the first time in her life, the Queen didn't know what to say. She looked at her blood-stained hands, red, so fragile, so human. She had seen countless battles, countless deaths, but this hit her differently. She lifted him gently, holding him close, her armor burning from the heat around them. "Foolish human," she whispered, voice trembling. "Why do you keep fighting when your body is broken?" His lips moved weakly. "Because someone has to stand when everyone else falls." The Queen's golden eyes softened. For the first time, she felt something unfamiliar, something almost painful. Respect. As the warship rose from the burning surface, carrying them both, she looked down at the man in her arms and realized something that would haunt her for days. The smallest being on the battlefield had shown the greatest strength, and deep inside her, a question began to burn. What kind of creature is man? The battlefield on Drethys was silent now. The fire still burned, and the air smelled of metal and death. The war had ended, but not without cost. Inside the Queen's flagship, Ryan Hale lay on a medical bed surrounded by strange lights and alien healers. The machines hummed softly, scanning his fragile human body. His armor had been torn apart, his leg broken, and deep cuts covered his shoulder and chest. His breathing was slow but steady. At his side stood Queen Syraxis, her golden eyes fixed on him. She had seen warriors fall by the thousands, but watching this small human bleed had shaken her in a way she could not explain. She had lifted him from the ruins with her own claws, carried him through the fire while plasma bolts rained around them. She had never done that for anyone, not even her own kind. "Will he live?" she asked her chief healer, her voice low but trembling. The alien bowed. "His body is weak, my queen. We have stopped the bleeding, but his bones are delicate. He may not survive the night." Syraxis's claws tightened. "Then make him survive. Use every resource. Do not let this human die." The healer bowed again and hurried away. For hours, the queen sat beside him, watching the slow rhythm of his breathing. She didn't know why she cared. Maybe it was guilt, or maybe it was something deeper, something she didn't have a name for. She remembered the moment she found him under the wreckage, still trying to stand even when half his body refused to move. She remembered his weak smile and those words, "Someone has to stand when everyone else falls." The words echoed inside her. It wasn't courage born from power. It was something else, something purer, something humans carried like fire in their fragile hearts. Hours turned into a long night. Outside the window, Drethys burned, but inside that room, the queen sat motionless beside the human. She had dismissed everyone else, refusing to leave his side. At one point, Ryan stirred. His fingers twitched. His eyelids fluttered. The queen leaned forward. His eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first. Then they found her face, when that tall figure shining under the pale light. He tried to speak, but only managed a hoarse sound. "Rest," the queen said softly, her tone surprisingly gentle. "You're safe," Ryan smiled faintly. "You came back for me?" Her chest tightened. "I should not have," she said honestly. "But I did." He tried to laugh, but it came out as a cough. "Guess I made an impression." The queen turned her head slightly to hide her face, though she didn't know why. No one had ever made her feel uncertain, but this human, broken and weak, had done it without even trying. "Your body is fragile," she said quietly. "You should not have survived." "Humans are stubborn," Ryan whispered. "We survive things we shouldn't, that's kind of our thing." She looked at him, really looked. His face was pale, his lips dry, yet his eyes still held that same strange light, a spark she had never seen in her strongest warriors. "Why did you risk your life for my soldiers?" she asked. "They are not your kind." Ryan's gaze softened. "Because pain doesn't care about kind. If someone's in danger, you help them. That's how I was raised." Syraxis fell silent. His words were simple, but they struck deep. On her worlds, warriors fought for glory, for the queen, for empire. But this man had fought for others, simply because it was right. For a long time, neither spoke. The ship's hum filled the silence, calm and steady. Then, almost without realizing, the queen reached out and placed one claw gently near his hand. She didn't touch him, afraid she might break him, but the gesture carried meaning. "You are strange, human," she said softly. "Your strength is not in your body." Ryan smiled again, eyes half closed. "Then maybe you're finally starting to understand us." She didn't reply, but her eyes lingered on his face. Something inside her, something ancient and cold, began to thaw. When he finally fell asleep, she rose slowly and looked out the window at the burning world below. The war was over, but something new had begun. In that quiet moment, Queen Syraxis realized a truth she had never considered before. That perhaps true power wasn't in unbreakable armor or perfect strength. It was in the heart that refused to stop beating, and the smallest creature she had ever seen had just shown her what real courage looked like. Days passed aboard the Vornathi flagship. The war was over, but Queen Syraxis found no peace. Victory had lost its taste. Her thoughts kept returning to one image, the fragile human who had nearly died to save her soldiers. Ryan Hale was still recovering in the medical chamber. The healers said his body was healing slowly, far slower than any Vornathi. His bones were soft, his blood too thin, and his skin too weak. Yet somehow his heart kept beating with the stubborn rhythm of life. Every morning, Syraxis found herself walking to his room, though she told herself it was just to check his progress. When she entered, he would smile despite the pain. "Morning, Your Majesty," he would say, his voice gentle. And every time that small human smile made something inside her chest tighten, something she could neither control nor explain. One morning, she found him trying to stand, leaning against the edge of the bed. The healers protested, but he ignored them. His legs trembled, his bandages stained with fresh blood. "What are you doing?" the Queen demanded, stepping forward. Ryan looked up at her, breathing hard. "I can't stay down forever. You'll tear your wounds apart," she snapped. He smiled faintly. "Then they'll heal again." Syraxis stared at him, her golden eyes narrowing. No warrior of her empire would stand after such injuries. Pain, to her kind, was a sign of weakness, something to be feared and avoided. But this human treated pain as if it were a challenge, something to face and defeat. "Your people truly don't understand limits," she said coldly. Ryan chuckled softly. "If we did, we'd still be hiding in caves." Her lips curved slightly, almost a smile, though she didn't realize it. For a moment, silence filled the room. Only the soft hum of the machines and Ryan's steady breathing could be heard. Finally, she asked, "Why do you do it, human? Why suffer for others who are not your kind?" Ryan sat slowly back down, wincing as pain rippled through his body. "Because life means more when you protect someone else. It doesn't matter what they look like or where they're from." The Queen looked away. His words unsettled her. The Vornathi had built their empire on strength and fear. They conquered, they ruled, they destroyed. No one had ever fought for them out of compassion. Yet here was a fragile creature from a small planet, bleeding for her soldiers without expecting anything in return. That night, Syraxis stood before the viewing window of her chamber. Stars glimmered like tiny fires scattered across the dark. Her reflection stared back at her, and tall, proud, perfect. But she didn't feel strong. For the first time in her long reign, she felt small. She whispered to herself, "Why does he not hate me? I am the reason he is here, the reason he almost died." But the next morning, when she entered his room again, Ryan greeted her with that same calm warmth. "You came again," he said, smiling weakly. "I came to see if your stubbornness has killed you yet," she replied, her tone hiding something softer. He laughed, a quiet, human laugh that filled the cold alien room with warmth. "Not yet, Your Majesty. Guess you're stuck with me a little longer." She found herself watching him closely, noticing the small scars on his hands, the tired but determined look in his eyes. Every part of him spoke of fragility, yet every breath he took defied that very word. The Queen didn't understand it, but she couldn't stay away. The human's presence was changing something in her, breaking down walls she hadn't even known existed. Later, as she walked through the halls of her ship, her generals approached. One of them, a towering warrior named Korath, bowed. "My queen, the human is a distraction. He should be sent home. Our soldiers whisper that you waste time on a weakling." Syraxis's eyes turned sharp. "Do my soldiers question my orders?" Korath lowered his gaze. "No, my queen. But they do not understand why you care for him." The Queen's voice dropped, cold and powerful. "Because he did what none of you would. He bled for others without command. That kind of strength deserves respect." The general fell silent. Her words spread across the ship like a quiet storm. That night, Syraxis returned to Ryan's chamber once more. He was asleep, his breathing soft, peaceful. She stood beside his bed, watching him. The sight made her heart heavy, and she didn't know why. For the first time in centuries, the Queen who had never feared death now feared something else entirely. The thought of losing one fragile human. She whispered, almost too softly to hear, "You are not weak. Ryan Hale, you are everything we are not." And as the ship drifted among the stars, the mighty Queen of Vornath felt something awaken inside her, something she had long believed her kind incapable of feeling, something dangerously close to love. Days turned into weeks, and the great warship drifted through the endless dark of space. The fires of Drethus were now only memories, but inside the ship something new was burning, quiet, hidden, and powerful. It wasn't war this time. It was something between Queen Syraxis and Ryan Hale, something neither of them fully understood. Ryan's wounds had mostly healed. The scars on his body remained, but he carried them proudly. He walked again, slower than before, but with the same unbreakable determination. The Vornathi soldiers who once mocked him now bowed their heads when he passed. The Queen had spoken, and her words carried across every deck. Respect the human who bleeds for others. But more than respect, there was something else, something unspoken between the queen and the human. Each evening, Syraxis visited him. Sometimes they spoke, sometimes they didn't. They would just sit in silence, watching the stars move past the windows. She had never done this with anyone. She didn't know why she did it now. Does it still hurt? She asked one night, her voice quieter than usual. Ryan looked at the scars on his arm and smiled softly. A little. But pain doesn't bother me much. Why not? She asked, genuinely curious. Pain is something my people avoid. We heal it quickly, we erase it. Ryan looked at her, his blue eyes calm and steady. Because pain reminds me I'm alive. Every scar tells me I fought for something that mattered. The queen turned her head slightly, her golden eyes reflecting the stars. That is what's strange, but also beautiful. Ryan laughed softly. That's humans for you. We find beauty in broken things. For a long moment, silence filled the room again. The queen found herself studying him. Not his strength, not his wounds, but the light in his eyes. There was something in him that her kind had lost long ago. Something pure and stubborn. She finally asked, Do you not hate me, Ryan? I am the reason you were brought into this war. The reason you almost died. Ryan looked at her with gentle eyes. No, Your Majesty. I don't hate you. You gave me a chance to prove something, not to you, but to myself. That even among gods and monsters, a human heart still matters. Her chest tightened. For a moment, she forgot how to breathe. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not with fear, not with flattery, but with simple truth. She rose slowly, walking to the window where the stars shimmered beyond the glass. You humans, you feel so much. It frightens me. Ryan tilted his head. Why? Because feelings make you weak, she whispered. Ryan smiled faintly. Or maybe they make us strong. Those words lingered between them like soft thunder. The queen turned to face him again. Her tall frame towered over him. But for the first time, she didn't see him as small. She saw him as something infinite, something greater than strength itself. He tried to stand, and she moved to help him, her clawed hand gently supporting his arm. For a second, her touch lingered longer than necessary. The warmth of his skin surprised her. It was so soft, so alive. She pulled her hand back quickly, but her heart trembled with something she didn't want to name. Thank you, Ryan said softly. The queen looked away, trying to hide the strange warmth rising inside her. You humans and your endless gratitude. It is done necessary. Ryan smiled again. Maybe. But it's how we show we care. The word care echoed in her mind like a whisper. The Queen of 10 Worlds, feared by millions, suddenly felt uncertain. Caring was weakness, wasn't it? And yet, when she looked at the human standing beside her, wounded, smiling, fragile but fearless, she wondered if maybe weakness was just another word for being alive. Later that night, when Ryan returned to his quarters, he found a small metal insignia placed on his table, the royal mark of the Queen's honor, something no non-Vornathi had ever received. He looked at it, touched the sharp edges, and smiled. He knew who had left it there. And far across the ship, Queen Syraxis stood alone by the viewing window, her reflection shimmering against the stars. For the first time in her long life, she whispered words meant for no one else. Pain does not make us weak. It makes us real. He has taught me that. As the stars drifted past, her golden eyes softened and a faint smile touched her lips. The mighty Queen of Vornath, who had crushed empires and conquered worlds, was now learning something she had never known: the quiet, unstoppable strength of the human heart. The quiet peace aboard the Vornathi warship didn't last long. For weeks, everything had been calm, too calm. Queen Syraxis had almost started to believe that the war was finally over, that maybe she and Ryan could find some strange understanding between their two worlds. But peace, as always, was fragile. It began with a sudden tremor that shook the great ship. The walls vibrated. Alarms screamed through the corridors and crimson lights flashed across the ceilings. Soldiers rushed in panic. Syraxis stood from her throne, her golden eyes blazing. "Report," she commanded. A young Vornathi officer shouted, "Your Majesty, enemy vessels detected. Stealth fleet approaching fast. They've breached the outer shields." Syraxis's voice hardened. "Impossible. Who dares attack the Queen's flagship?" Before anyone could answer, another explosion tore through the hull, throwing everyone to the ground. Ryan, who had been in the medical bay, felt the blast shake the entire deck. He stumbled but didn't hesitate. Pain shot through his leg, the same one that had barely healed. But he forced himself forward. He ran through the smoke-filled corridors, hearing distant screams and the clash of energy weapons. Soldiers were falling, and enemy drones had already infiltrated the ship. Ryan grabbed a fallen guard's blaster and sprinted toward the command hall. When he arrived, the massive doors were half broken. Inside, the Queen stood, her armor shining with battle light. She was fighting, elegant and deadly, against multiple attackers. Her claws sliced through metal, her movements fast as lightning. But there were too many. Syraxis! Ryan shouted, firing into the swarm of drones. She turned for just a second, and in that second a blast aimed straight for her heart. Without thinking, Ryan leapt in front of her. The energy bolt hit him in the side, sending him crashing to the floor. The world blurred. His breath caught. The pain was sharp, hot, and merciless. Ryan! The Queen's voice broke in a way no one had ever heard before. She unleashed her fury. Energy flared from her armor as she destroyed every drone in sight. The room shook under her power. When silence finally returned, she dropped to her knees beside him. "Why?" she whispered, her hands trembling as she touched his burned side. "Why did you do that?" Ryan coughed, a weak smile on his lips. "Because that's what we do. We protect the ones we care about." Her heart twisted painfully. "Foolish human. You could have died." He winced, barely able to breathe. "Then I would have died doing the right thing." She pressed her glowing hand against his wound, trying to heal him with Vornathi energy. But the damage was too deep, and her hands shook uncontrollably. No, don't you dare leave me, human," she whispered fiercely. Ryan looked at her, her eyes shining with something she had never shown before. Fear. Not fear of enemies, but fear of losing someone. "You're crying," he said softly. She blinked, shocked as a tear slid down her cheek. "Vornathi, do not cry." Ryan gave a faint laugh. "Guess I changed that too." Her lips trembled. "Be quiet. Save your strength," he smiled weakly. "You look beautiful when you're worried." The word struck her like a blade and a blessing at once. She froze, her chest aching in ways she didn't understand. "You humans are impossible," she whispered. He reached up, his hand barely touching her armor. "And you are not as cold as you think." For a long, silent moment, the mighty Queen of Vornath forgot about her army, her ship, her crown. She was just a woman, holding a fragile life in her arms, realizing it meant more than any empire. Finally, she called through her comms, her voice trembling. "Medical unit, to the command hall now." Within minutes, the healers arrived and carried Ryan away. As they took him, his hand slipped from hers and something inside her broke quietly. Later, when the fires were put out and the enemy ships destroyed, Syraxis stood alone again by the great window. Her reflection looked different now, softer, almost human. She whispered to herself, "He risked his life for me. A queen, a conqueror, and he calls that love?" The word felt strange on her tongue, but it burned warmly in her chest. When she went to the med bay hours later, she found him asleep, pale but breathing. She sat beside his bed and placed her hand over his. "You foolish, brave creature," she murmured. "You make me question everything I know." For the first time in her long, lonely reign, she didn't feel like a queen. She felt alive. Outside, the stars drifted quietly by, unaware that in the cold metal heart of a warship, something impossible was happening. An alien queen was falling for a fragile, fearless human. Days passed, and the great warship floated silently through the black sea of stars. The fires were gone, the damage repaired, but for Queen Syraxis, peace had not returned. She spent every night in the med bay, sitting quietly beside Ryan's bed. The human who had saved her life lay pale and still, his breath faint, his skin marked with the burn of the energy blast. She had faced death countless times before. Enemies, assassins, rebellions, but nothing terrified her like the idea of losing him. Every morning, she found herself whispering words she never thought she'd say. "Wake up, human. You can't leave me yet." The healers said his recovery was uncertain. Human bodies were fragile, they said. But Syraxis refused to accept that. She ordered the best scientists, the best medics, even her own life force transfer chamber prepared. No one dared question her. One evening, when the ship drifted close to the blue glow of a nebula, Syraxis entered the medbay again. Ryan was still unconscious, machines quietly humming around him. She sat beside him, her armor gone, wearing only a soft, dark robe. Her face looked tired, her golden eyes dim. She reached out and brushed his hand gently. "You once said humans never stop trying," she whispered. "Then don't stop now. Not when I finally understand you." Her voice broke softly. "I thought I knew what strength was, crushing armies, ruling galaxies, but you showed